Classification. Define the term species. How are species named? What is classification? How is classification related to evolution? So there are 1.8 million species that have been identified, but the total number is estimated to be between 10 and 100 million. 99% of the species that have existed are now extinct, but there is no fossil record. There is a massive amount of species, so we need to sort them into groups. So we use classification, which is the organisation of living organisms into groups. So the definition of species, there's two parts of it. So species are similar to one another, but different from other species. So they have similar genes, they are physically and biochemically similar, they have similar development, similar immunology, and they occupy the same niche. They are also capable of breeding to produce fertile offspring. So they can successfully produce offspring when a species reproduces sexually. Any genes can be combined with any, but they belong to the same gene pool. So the way in which we name species is called the binomial system. So originally, names were just described features, like the blackbird was just a black bird. But it did mean that some names were used for different species around the world. So it wasn't a worldwide naming system. So Linnaeus devised a system to name organisms, which has two names, which is the binomial system, and it is universal, and it's based on Latin or Greek. The first name is the generic genus name, and the second name is the specific name, the species. So names should be printed in italics, but if they're handwritten, underlined. And the first letter of the genus should be in uppercase, and the species should be in lowercase. If the species name is unknown, just write SP or SP, e.g. Felix SP. The naming constantly changes because the current names are based on our current scientific knowledge, but as knowledge increases, the classification of species can change. So classification is where you arrange it into manageable groups, and the practice of classification is known as taxonomy. And you can either use artificial classification, which are differences that are visible at the time, e.g. the size, colour, same characteristics, same function, but not necessarily the same evolutionary origins, e.g. wings of butterflies and birds, both for flight, but they originated differently. And then there's natural classification, which is evolutionary relationships, so between organisms and their ancestors, and species can be put into groups using shared features from the ancestors, and it's a hierarchy of groups. So associations in natural classification can be based on homologous characteristics, which have similar evolutionary origins regardless of their function. For example, the wing of a bird and the arm of a human have the same structure and have evolved from a common ancestor, therefore they're homologous. And all systems of classification are for our benefit, but nature does not necessarily follow a system of classification. So organising species into groups is known as taxonomy, and each group is called a taxon. So taxonomy is the study of these groups and their position in the hierarchical order, and they have taxonomic ranks. And these ranks are kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So a way in which to remember this is king, Paul, can, order, fat, greasy, sausages. So K for kingdom, P for phylum, C for class, O for order, F for family, G for genus, and S for species. Phylogeny is the hierarchical hierarchical order of taxonomic ranks based on evolutionary history. This evolutionary relationship is known as phylogeny. The phylogenetic descent of different species is represented by a tree diagram, where the oldest species is found at the base, and the most recent species are found at the top of the tree branches. So there are some difficulties in defining species. So usually defined by visible similarities and the ability to produce fertile offspring. But the difficulties are that species change and can develop into new species. And also there's much variation within the species. And a good example of this is dogs. Because they're selectively bred, that has led to many different breeds. So you can see here that these are both the same species, but they look vastly different. Also, many species are extinct. So difficulties defining species. So horse and donkeys are actually different species, but they can mate to produce offspring, which are called mules. And these are actually infertile. And the reason is because a horse has 32 pairs of chromosomes, whereas a donkey has 31 pairs. So therefore, when the gametes fuse, the mule will have 63 chromosomes, which can't form gametes in meiosis. But there have been very rare cases of a fertile female mule. So it kind of makes it very difficult to identify between different species.